From our studios in Los Angeles and Tampa, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. On Green Tag, we look at the top news each week, and we try and pick the stories we think matter most to the theme park and themed entertainment professional. And this week, we are starting off with Legoland, which reached 2 million visitors in just 1 year, which puts them pretty squarely actually in the rankings for theme park attendance, in the global rankings.
You should probably clarify that was Legoland Shanghai.
That's right. Legoland Shanghai. Did I not? I'm it's a day, kids. It's been a week. It's been a week. Yeah, so that's Legoland Shanghai. And I've been to Legoland Shanghai, and I think, to me, this is something that is validating. It's not really a surprise because, as I mentioned, I think on the show, I don't know if I mentioned it or when, but Legoland Shanghai is a very good park. I think it's probably the pinnacle of Legoland so far. And I hope that they're going to take that inspiration from that and kind of work it into other locations. But it's large. It's very well done from a thematic point of view. And there's great merchandise and there's great retail experiences. And it's a very well done park. There's shade, which is nice. And there's entertainment and there's indoor entertainment venues, which is also nice. So there's a lot to like about this park. And looking at the numbers here, they reached more than 2 million visitors in year one, which is the fastest any Legoland resort has reached that mark. And families with children obviously account for over 80% of guests, which is the family market we've been talking about. Nearly 60,000 guests celebrated birthdays at the resort in the first year. More than 230,000 Lego minifigures were sold, nearly a quarter of them customized by guests. We'll come back to that. 8 creative workshops hosted over 8,000 sessions with more than 170,000 participants. And Merlin says the annual pass base came in above expectations and that the ticket revenue and in-park spending have reached a balanced mix. 20% of employees are local residents, which means they're pulling also from the nearby area. And Merlin clarified that China represents a key pillar for their strategy going forward. They will deliver even richer play experiences to Chinese families. So the things that struck out to me about this was the repeat visitations from their annual pass base, and then, of course, the merchandise program, which leans heavily on personalization. Like I said, nearly a quarter of the 230,000 minifigures sold were custom designed by guests. Plus, they also do a commemorative brick passport, which is designed as a keepsake. So I think they're hitting all of the bases, right? It's good for families. They have a good mix of indoor, like it's a huge mini land area there, and all the mini land is inside. So it's a great area to just sit down with a cafe and escape the heat. So a lot of the restaurants are also indoors. So there's lots of space and cool off areas. They do these interactive sessions and classes. So not just visiting, but there's other reasons to come back. They're clearly activating the locals and they're activating the annual pass holders, and they're leaning into personalization in terms of merchandise and keepsakes. So they can actually make memories when they're there, take those memories back, come back to visit. They haven't rolled out seasonal programs yet, but it's only their first year. So I think this is checking all the boxes. I mean, if you were wondering what Universal Kids Resort could have looked like, it could have looked like this. Was that too far?
It's interesting because that would knowing how cranky you are, I'm surprised it took you that long. But no, the thing that I think is interesting about this particular story is, having done a little bit of preliminary work for a Legoland park a while ago, I became very familiar with their brand and their approach to what they want their theme park guests to experience and who they want their theme park guests to be. Mm-hmm. And I think right now the opening of this park and where we are in the world of themed entertainment they've kind of had a great crossroads, because, as we've been saying on the show over the last few weeks, is more and more families are looking to vacation together, more and more experiences that the entire family can do, and not just a place where everybody can go and then run off and do their own thing, but things that people can actually do together. Because, I'm sorry, if you look at Lego as one of those magical brands that if you're looking at people's Christmas lists for Legos, the age range is 3 to 103, number one. So it does have, even though they are targeting younger children, it's a perfect excuse for dad and mom and big brother and whomever else to go play with Legos, to go and play in Legoland. So I think the nature of the park, because their whole concept is they want to give mastery and control to the creator. They want to give mastery and control to the guest. So, it makes total sense that these huge number of minifigures are created by the guests. So they're not really buying a minifigure, they're buying the experience of creating their own minifigure, and they're using the minifigure, they're using the souvenir as a physical representation of that, so they remember it in the future. It kind of goes back to the phrase I've used for years, and that is that the product we sell are memories. Our products are not T-shirts or food, or our products are memories. And if you can tie a memory to a specific souvenir, and it's something that Disney has done very well with in the past, Universal has done very well, but Lego let's face it, they started as a retail chain. They started as a retail endeavor. They started with the product and made it so that the interactive product became even more interactive when you're in the parks. So I think it's a perfect storm. I think that their intent for the parks and where the world is now when it comes to themed entertainment are hitting the perfect stride. I would not be surprised if we see that the other Lego parks around the world do pretty well in the upcoming short-term future as well. I think this is a perfect example of people wanting things to do, not just things to look at. I agree with you on all the creature comforts. I agree with you on all the indoor shows. But I also think that part of the reason that it soars, even things like I'm looking for the number here, the sessions, the creative workshops.
8,000 creative workshops. Right? Yeah.
With more than 170,000 participants.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, 8,000 sessions with 120,000.
That's huge.
That's huge. Yeah.
So it shows that people are expanding what their view is, and I think this is why we've mentioned it in passing a couple times. I think this is why we're seeing things like zoos and museums, etc., kind of becoming more overlap into the themed attraction world, because they have these opportunities, and if they can make them fun enough, people are ready and willing to participate in them. So yeah, if you do, like, for example, if you do a creative workshop session and you walk out of there with a minifigure, or you walk out of there with a plan for your own because there are programs out there. I've worked with Lego creators before. There are programs out there who, if you give them a design, they will tell you exactly what you need in order to create it, and the colors that you need, and they'll do a printout of all the list of all the blocks that you need and all the parts and fussy bits. And so it's it's a park that's all about creativity. It's a park that's all about putting that creativity in the hands of its guests. And I think that that's exactly what we are trending into in the world right now, and that is that people want to feel as though they have a little bit of. And I'm not gonna use the I word. I'm not gonna say everything has to be immersive, but what I am gonna say is that they have a little bit more mastery and control, and they don't just look at something. They either learn something, they do something, they experience something, they build something. It makes it so much more fun. It's so funny. This ties in a weird sort of way, at least in my brain. It ties to, I was watching something on fad food from the 80s, from the 70s and 80s. And none of you listening are old enough to remember this, I'm sure, but maybe a couple of you are. But they used to have a thing called Jello 1, 2, 3. Jello 1, 2, 3, you'd mix it up, you'd pour it in, and it would form 3 separate layers. There'd be a layer of Jello, a layer of foam, and a layer of mousse. And it automatically separated. It was like a science project that happened in your fridge. And the whole reason it sold was because it did this sort of magical thing. You could actually, it wasn't just let's make Jello. It was let's make Jello 1, 2, 3 because it's cool. And that's why it sold. And that's why it was hugely popular. It went away because other things got, replaced it that were more fun. But it's all about the not just the end product, but how you get to that end product. So it's like,
Right.
it's not just let's sell minifigures. It's let's create experiences where people can build their own minifigures, customize their own minifigures so that they are their minifigures, not the same one that another, the other 1,999,000 people have. It's yours, So I think this is a great case study for people to start looking at what their product offerings are and what can you offer that the guests make, do, participate in, learn a bit more about, as opposed to just, we used to try to hide all the behind the scenes stuff, but now I think we're to the point now where where audiences want to know more. I think social media has done that to us, but they want to know more. They want to feel as though they're more a part of the experience and not just walking through it. So, and Lego, I think, has captured lightning in a bottle on this one.
I want to just quickly double tap on a few things there. I agree with everything about that participation, but I also want to underscore that this particular Legoland in Shanghai does offer both genres, and I think the balance is important because there are still people that like to go to movies because they want to be entertained and they don't want to have to do anything. And there's a roller coaster at this park. There are great places to eat. There are a lot of things you can do if you just want to be entertained. And there's also the participatory activities like you mentioned. So I think the balance is important where you have both things, and it doesn't have to mean that you have to spend a lot of money to do this, but having a good mix where there is a show where you just sit and watch them use Lego puppets. That's great. There is also these creative workshops. That is also great. So it's good to have a balance where people can choose their level that they want to participate in and be entertained in. And then I would also say that, again, back to what we talked about when we talked about Universal Kids, is that it is a good experience for everybody. I was there with IAPA, so we were kind of with a group, but I went on my own, and it was entertaining just for me to go around because of the mini land is fun to look at, and like they have the workshops, but they also have the coaster and they have the so it's interesting to more than just children that are 5 years old, right? That's the thing we talked about before, where this idea of it's an interesting theory to say it only has to be entertaining to like children 5 to 5-year-olds, but like I don't think it really holds true because, like Scott was saying, the whole idea is that you're doing these things together as a family. And if it's only interesting to the 5-year-old, it doesn't get as much traction. So I want to also point that out because there's just an interesting park. Just overall, the areas are well done. And yes, I mean, it's the same argument. You could argue that the kids don't care how good the theming is because they just want to play with Legos. That's fine. In a way, it's for them and isn't for them at the same time, because
I said, I mean, let's not ignore the very first thing that I said about this is Lego has a very magical sweet spot and it's very wide. I have friends my age who, when a certain new Lego set comes out, that's the first thing they want, so it's not just a children targeted brand. And I think Lego recognizes that, but I think they when they go to the theme parks, because I've only done the one in Orlando. Oh no, I've done the one in Orlando, and then I did one in Canada many years ago. But they kind of take that and put it through the lens of childhood. They put it through the lens of imagination and playfulness. So yeah, I agree. I think it's a little bit of something for everybody. And there were times in my career where I would say, if you can entertain the youngest and the oldest member of the group, you're fine because you've got everybody covered. But I think the differentiation now between the young, the middle, the adult, the older adult, I think there's a lot more overlap. And I think that the more you can make it fun for everybody, the more successful it's going to be. So I think that is a change. I think that is a shift that has happened in the theme park world, because in most theme parks, the roller coasters cover that middle ground. They cover that perfectly. So that's why, from the entertainment standpoint, we used to target the seniors and the little ones, because they were the ones left holding purses while somebody else was riding a roller coaster.
Right. Well, let's move on, I guess, from Legoland. I don't have a transition. I don't know. So
I think you just did it. Let's move on.
let's move on. So we're doing a very quick interlude here on the earnings that we got from Delta and from the four big banks, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo, plus Delta. We're going to just mash this all together. I think, and I'm going to put in some other research here too. So first thing, if I'm going to summarize all of the Delta earnings as to why they matter for us, it's that there are just fewer economy seats, and those seats are also more expensive. Simultaneously, airlines are expanding into premium because that's where they're seeing growth. So these two things are happening. So, and note that that's economy, but there are even less of the basic like budget seats. So there's like 30% less budget seat inventory overall, and then economy is more expensive. Premium is also more expensive, but also that's where they're investing because it's a higher margin product. So that's what's going on in the earnings for the airlines. And we saw that underscored again in the latest ones because it's the second quarter that they reported that the premium ticket revenue outsold their main ticket revenue and for the second quarter at Delta. So that means that the smaller premium stuff just outsold it. It wasn't by much, 6.92 billion versus 6.85 billion, but still, that's it's because premium is such a smaller segment of what they're offering. So that's why they're transitioning more stuff over to premium. So
I was just going to say, but I think it's important to recognize. I think it's important to recognize that part of that is because they are converting stuff over to premium.
Right. That's right.
You know, and it's happening in all airlines. You know, I've noticed it in the airlines when I'm flying. There are fewer and fewer what I will call base price seats. And it's what some of the what used to be considered economy airlines are now doing, following the same trend that we're talking about here, is they will have the base price with which basically means you are assigned a seat when you board the plane. You know, you can't pick anything ahead. You can't take any luggage with you. It costs extra to do anything. Costs extra to think about your luggage. I don't know. But looking at the seating process now for specifically for Southwest, for example, the open seating days of Southwest are long gone. They now have premium seating, ultra leg room, exit row, and then the back of the plane is the economy seating. And there's a significant difference in each. I mean, a significant pricing difference in each of those levels. So, you know, the airline industry used to be very premium. That was the whole idea. Only rich people flew. That was the concept. And then they tried to make it possible and accessible to everyone. And now when fewer people are traveling long distances, let's put it that way.
We're going back. Yeah.
They're going back and they're flipping it back from a pricing standpoint. So, you know, and as we were talking about before the show, if you have 100 seats and you used to have 20 seats that were premium and you now have 40 seats that are premium, yeah, it makes sense that your premium sales are going up because you have more product. You've actually taken product away from the economy side and added it to the premium side.
Right. Which is, I think there's some data to back that up too. The Bank of America Institute reported that nearly 40% of lower income households have no summer travel plans, and that their travel related card spending was down year over year through April, which is exactly what you're saying, which is basically that if you are on that side, again, I don't want to keep talking about the K-shape, but we're seeing a lot of stuff happening. It's like the lower end is like they're just not going to spend on it. Now, I would argue that report misses some critical nuance there. That means, again, to what we just said, travel. 40% of lower income households had no summer travel plans. That doesn't mean they have no plans for summer. It just means that they don't have any plans to get on a plane and fly to Disney World for summer. It means that they're probably going to get in the car and drive to Six Flags. Right. I mean, that's I think some of the nuance in this data, which is exactly what you're saying, Scott. It's like they're kind of just the planes, I think, see that also. And they're like, we're just going to get rid of this category. If we can shift this category, this budget category up because there's just less demand. for the budget travel is what's happening, because those folks, like I said,
Right.
40% of the lower income are just have no travel. Yes, because they can't afford the plane ticket. So they're going to instead put that money to gas and just drive somewhere.
Well, and anecdotally, I'm also seeing that they are shifting the numbers of flights. They're shifting the numbers
Yes.
of direct flights, even between hubs. So it's interesting because we say that travel is down, but every time I fly, the plane is jam packed to the gills.
Right.
But that's because, again, they're pulling seats out of the inventory. They're pulling flights out, and hopefully using some of that savings so that they can bolster their profit.
Right. And a few more details here. So basically the bank takeaway is that each of the banks posted card spending growth between 9 and 12%, which is insane in one quarter that you're having card spending. And that just means, I think we've been talking around this over and over, but basically everyone is just putting more on their cards. And that could be that things are just more expensive. Like, that's the obvious kind of conclusion. The good news is you don't really see the default rate is not rising. So that means that people are still able to afford it. They're just spending more on things. Now, the question is, what are they spending money on? And I think that's where we get the division, right? Where between, like we said, that lower incomes, they're going to be spending less on those travel. But I do think that it's pretty clear that everybody is going to be doing some sort of recreation, whether they do it in a cheaper way, they trade down, or they trade up. And it's interesting because the Square Mouse survey that I cited earlier said that the average trip cost climbed at 24% for summer, which is crazy. But it also said that only 24% of Americans are spending more due to prices alone, because 53% of the people in that survey are cutting back on other expenses to fund travel this year. So I think we keep saying this, where it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Like, especially Americans, they want to do their, when you go travel, or you're going to call it recreation or whatever, tourism, put it in that bucket, however you want to define it, but they just want to do it. And if you're on the lower income, you need the escapism, but you're going to just trade down and you're going to go to your local museum when they have their free days, or you're going to go to Six Flags, you're going to do whatever. And then if you're on the higher end, you're actually probably going to spend more money because you feel like you deserve it. So you're going to trade up into premium experiences.
I think, I'm going to put this into my glass half full versus glass half empty lens.
Right.
I think what this says is people want to travel. People feel the need to travel. I think we're generationally in a place where people are recognizing the rejuvenation that you can get as a family when you travel together. I think they're recognizing the need for travel, and that's why they're not going to restaurants, or they're cutting back shopping, or they're not going on home improvements in order to do a vacation. That kind of vacation is more and more important. And I think it's still, sorry, I hate to say this, but I think it's still ramifications from COVID. I think it's still families that are going, oh my God, when the kids were growing up, we couldn't let them outside. We couldn't let them go to school. We couldn't let them do anything fun. We've got to make up for that time. And I think that, whether it is conscious or subconscious, I think that is part of the equation. I think it also helps explain some of the credit card rise. I think it's people who are, yes, they are scrimping and saving on home improvement and dining out and that sort of thing, but they still are putting it on their credit card, and that also explains why the default rate has not gone up. So it all kind of works together in my brain a little bit. But for us in the industry, I think it is short term, at least in my opinion. Short term, I think it's good news because it means there is still a desire for the product we offer. The flip side of that is we cannot become comfortable with that. We have to make certain that when they do scrimp and save, that when they come to our parks, when they come to our attractions, they have a top quality time. And that's not just so they come back to our attraction, that's so that they come back to any attraction. And I think it's important to recognize that the interest is there. We just have to deliver.
Right. Oh, that's a great segue, because something that we need to deliver more of is, I think, shaded experiences during the summer. Because it's just people, I think, are angry. I mean, we were seeing this more and more. We've talked how many times we've talked about the heat,
Mhm.
and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But meanwhile, Disneyland Paris, they are canceling some of their fireworks because literally the local prefecture told them that it's too hot. So Disneyland Paris is swapping out fireworks for drones for the Bastille Day next year, after the local authorities told them that they had to stop the pyrotechnics because it was literally dangerous summer heat.
So help me understand this. How does switching fireworks to drones, how does that make it less dangerous for guests due to heat?
Well, I don't pretend to understand the politics of Paris, Scott, but the local authorities
Because
seem to
I'm
think
not sure.
that fireworks make things more hot, and that they don't want more fireworks happening. So they, even though these were scheduled for nighttime, that they don't want any more heat in the area, and so they want.
Well,
So now Disney has moved over to drones,
and
drones
I'm
only.
wondering if it's partially because too, with higher heat, um, usually comes less rain. Usually means drier conditions. I mean, we're dealing with forest fires
Yes,
right
right,
now.
right. There's fires
That
everywhere.
that
Yeah, yeah.
that to me would be the reason that they want to shift, is just out of safety, so that you don't have stray embers falling into pine straw and pine straw that has not seen rain for 5 weeks. That would make sense to me. I don't really see how the changing of fireworks to drones is going to impact the guest experience that much, but I
Right,
do think that it could be safer for the area around Disneyland Paris. And I
right,
think I think we're going to continue to see things. I think we're seeing it already. Fireworks have become less and less the centerpiece of end of night experiences. They're
I
still
agree.
part of it because they are still expected, but they're becoming less and less. And I think that this is a perfect excuse for the French government to say, we're afraid to put up fireworks because there's a higher risk of widespread fires.
Right.
You know,
Well, there's a lot to that. We're not gonna have time to talk about this, but of course, all of us listening in the U.S., a lot of the parks in our country had to close during this week for different days due to wildfires and dangerous air conditions. So they just out again, back to the whole inside versus outdoor thing. When your whole park is outdoors and the air quality is bad. So it's not, now we're not even talking about the heat. We're talking now about just the quality of the air. So between the quality of the air and between the actual physical temperatures outside, a lot of parks have had to close down for a few days this summer. And then, like you said, the fireworks, there's been more reports about how fireworks do just worsen air quality. Also, they do worsen air quality because you're exploding stuff into the air. So it's worsening air quality, right? So
it's a
I
rather
agree
large
with
story about that over the 4th, but that's a whole nother thing.
Right. But I think you can see, like, to your point, a lot of these things converging, where really, I do think we're going to have to rethink what nighttime entertainment is going to look like. And I also think we're going to have to rethink summer, because summer used to be the main travel holiday for the theme parks. And I think this summer has not been great. We've heard a lot of reports of Disneyland having very few guests, and Disney World seeing much lower attendance records. Is it the heat? Is it the prices? Is it the trade down travel? Is it there's just more competition where you could go to a free museum and hang out versus all
Well,
the money? I mean, what
and
is it? Is it everything?
and I think part of it, quite honestly, I think part of it is the kickback or the backlash of extending the winter and fall holidays earlier
That
and
too.
earlier and earlier and earlier, to the point where it's like, oh no, I'm not going to go over the summer. I'll wait because Halloween starts in August, so we'll go then.
Yes, kids. In case you weren't checking, we are literally less than 3 weeks away from Halloween season starting, because
And
ticketed
it's,
Halloween events start August 7th.
but you know why? Because people will pay for it. because the demand is there. And what used to be a shoulder season event has now shifted into the main season. And now we have to talk about the shoulder season being summer. And we just might explore some of this in greater depth on Unhinged, because that's where we're going next, because we're out of time. Guys, once again, thank you all so very much for listening, for joining us every week. I love to hear it when people say it's my Monday morning drive to work. I listen to y'all, and it feels like I'm just catching up and getting ready to dive into the industry. And so thank you so much. Please spread the word. The more the merrier. On behalf of Philip Hernandez with Gantom Lighting and Control, and myself, Scott Swenson with Scott Swenson Creative Development, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30, and we will see all of you next week.